I want to start with showing some of the results of a survey we just published today, I think, or maybe yesterday evening, which we realized as a survey in cooperation with PwC, which was around innovation and disruption in light of the revised European Payment Services Directive. So what we particularly looked at or asked for was at what level of preparation are the various players which are affected by the PSD2 regulation. So I'll go through some of these numbers, and I think it's interesting to look at some of this. So what are in general information security investment plans in the context of PSD2, strong customer authentication, API security, KYC, customer identity management, and a little bit about a sample, and then finally some recommendations for that. So when we ask for the investment plans, so I picked 4 areas here. Strong authentication, it looks like by far most of the organizations plan to invest into strong authentication, which doesn't come to a surprise, I would say. When it comes to other areas such as API security management, which is the third number here, it looks quite different. So it's below 60%. If we go back to what we talked about yesterday, that it's mandatory to expose interfaces, then obviously it's also mandatory to secure interfaces. So in that area, it looks worse. I think the full study, which by the way looks far better than my slide deck, is available for download for you. So you might go to the layouted survey instead. Fraud monitoring, maybe not that high because a lot of organizations already have something in place. We also ask for fine-grained access control, which I think becomes more and more important, particularly also in the light of GDPR, which is also another regulation coming up. So with the privacy directive, or privacy regulation we're facing, things like consent per purpose, so very granular use rights also of privacy data and other things become more important. So overall, it's in most areas, aside of strong authentication, the numbers aren't overly high regarding the current investment plans. And so that's something which shows up in other areas as well. So when we ask for the authentication technologies that are available to customers or which are planned, what is clear? Yes, username and password is something we still find a lot. It's still a very common way to do it, or be it another knowledge-based approach. So the red color says in place, green says not in gray or whatever it is says not in scope. The others are more bland, so some didn't answer various aspects, but overall it shows it's still very much, I would say, the standard approaches plus some OTP software, so out-of-band SMS primarily, and other things in that space which we find. Rarely hardware, and very, very rarely any biometrics yet. So it's, how should I phrase it? It's very much old school authentication. Given what we need in future, yes, there's some second factor stuff in here, but I think we are all aware that hardware OTPs won't be the solution. Obviously not. Because the cost of logistics, all the problems associated with deploying hardware OTPs to customers at large scale are far too big. That's also, I would say, very old school at the end of the day. It does make sense in certain areas internally, etc., but not at large scale deployment externally. So what we see is some interest in biometrics. So there's a number of organizations saying we plan it or we roll it out. So FIDO is clearly sort of on the watch list, so to speak, planned later. So organizations are looking at at least 1/6 of the organizations, more or less, is looking at FIDO Alliance standards, but still the numbers are relatively low. We also looked at multi-factor risk-based adaptive authentication. And when we discussed this, so I think this, when we did the survey, it was before the changes in the requirements came last week. So right now it's that you could say, okay, I have risk-based authentication plus one factor. But even then, when we look at what is in place, some sort of multi-factor authentication is in place, at least according to what the respondents said. Far less was risk-based authentication. Interestingly, so we also have a split between the various types of the AISPs, PISPs, etc. Even when we look at only the banks, it's not that we have a 70 or 80 or 100% ratio here. Unfortunately, really adaptive authentication, which is flexible regarding authentication, which is flexible regarding the risk-based aspect, is still very rarely found. And so what these numbers show is that given that we don't have that much time until PSD2 becomes effective, that we have a gap between what is required and what is already there. So obviously there's a strong need for organizations to invest in that area, because the sort of, okay, there's some multi-factor which might be sufficient in some cases, not in all. So we had this discussion about out-of-band SMS and whether it's valid or not yesterday. So even that number might be, so even the ones who claim they have multi-factor authentication, if we had the numbers and we don't have it in that detail, having a multi-factor authentication in place which is PSD2 compliant, the numbers probably are significantly lower, because yes, we exactly will end up with the challenge around out-of-band SMS. That means we have a need to invest, and simply said, most organizations aren't where they should be when it comes to this strong customer authentication requirements of PSD2. That's, I think, a very simple fact, and without telling too much about the next slides, that's something which is sort of the ongoing or the recurring theme of these results. I think it's not really surprising. We had a discussion yesterday about the changes in our organizational changes, or the reluctance of organizations to change. And I think it's the typical situation. It's trying to ignore these things until it's more or less too late, and then moving into or switching into panic mode, and then doing something to be compliant, usually at spending too much for that compared to a well-planned rollout, and ending up with something which frequently is not the best solution you could have achieved for that money you spent. Standards in place, it's a little bit broader here the view we had. So EIDAS, very unknown. UMA, which is important in the context of GDPR, so the General Data Protection Regulation. UMA is a standard which allows user-managed access. It's called, which allows to control access to, for instance, the personal data. FIDO Alliance standards, I think that's a little bit optimistic. Probably tools have some tools have support, but I have to say most of the tool vendors are very ignorant regarding FIDO. Even the vendors in the adaptive authentication space, many of them don't yet have support for FIDO Alliance standards. FIDO Alliance standards are interesting because you have a standard way to interact between a device with biometrics, or also with other types of strong authentication. It's not necessarily biometrics, even while this is the main focus, and the backend system. So it makes a lot of sense because, for instance, you could support different biometrics of different types of mobile phones in a standardized way instead of at adapting to Samsung versus whatever, that one, and the one that burns, and the others, or to Microsoft or whoever else is in the space, you can do it via standard. OAuth clearly is the most important standards. Again, it's not where you should be. Providing APIs, 60% says we don't provide, 60%, 6 out of 10 say we don't provide publicly accessible APIs yet. Even while there are some in which don't need to do it. When you look at the banks, I think, so when I look at the detailed data for the banks, it's even a little worse. So it's more or less 1 out of 3 banks claims that they already provide interfaces. That might be partially to some lack of knowledge, the numbers, what really is provided, but overall, obviously, when we come to the entire, I think this aligns well with the numbers we had around API security. When we look at it, that part, which is, I think, maybe the most complex part, so authentication, if you're honest, it costs money, but it's not a rocket science to solve. I would say, okay, yeah, we add some authentication technology, there are sufficient vendors available. When we look at the API part, then it's about how can we do it? We have the core IT, we have to need to build another sort of layer around it where we have the more agile things. We have to expose APIs then for the third parties. There's so much architecture, there's so much complex security in it. So if you really look at the security challenges, when you want to provide secure and scalable access, and not only security, also runtime, performance, etc. issues, when you want to provide secure and scalable access for third parties, which then at the end go down to your core systems because it's account information. Where is the account information found? It's found in your core IT systems. So at the end of the day, and it's really interesting, these systems might run on your mainframe still. Sometimes that's the case. And even if it's not a mainframe, it might be core banking system, which is maybe not the most well-architected when it comes to APIs and end-to-end security in combination with other systems. So it's extremely challenging. And I did 1 or 2 advisories around sort of architecture in that space. And let's phrase it like this, the intellectually most challenging projects are defining an end-to-end authorization architecture in this heterogeneous world. So I know few areas which are as complex as these. So it's nothing you can do just, I plug it in and it runs. If you want to do it well, compliant, and it's not only that you need to, so there's the regulation that you need to expose these interfaces. But there are all the other regulations. If you go back to our standard finance regulations, which are around access governance, you need to keep these in mind as well. And then it becomes really complex from the entire architecture. Saying we are not really prepared is a problem. Because if you're realistic, more or less, if you start now, I would say it's probably already too late to do it well. So, what is provided access to some other, so bank account information, okay, we have to be correct, it's not all banks which we had in here. So these numbers are showing it in general. So transactions, around 40%, bank account information, below 30%, but it's aligned, so to speak, with the number of banks, I would say. Other customer data, etc. But it still shows that there obviously are still some gaps, and I think it's important that every player starts to think about the way he wants to deal with APIs. So that's one of the other questions. I'm rather fast today, as I observe. How does the organization currently handle initial customer identification? The simple answer is that's particular banks, or here it's also offline, online. So online only are 8.9%. I remember the second keynote of yesterday was the customer expectations, which was held by Christian Goy. So I would say, if I look at the customer expectations, probably I could remove the dots. It would be pretty precise in the number. So maybe 89% would expect to do it online, and 8.9% have it implemented. So there's an obvious gap again. So I understand the regulations, I understand the challenges around that, but I just recently had a conversation with one of the players in the video event, which had their conversations with the BaFin, where the regulators accept certain forms of, let's say, more modern authentication, more convenient at the end of the day. It's not about being modern or not at the end of the day. It's about being user-friendly. It's about doing what the customer expects, because at the end, as I've said yesterday multiple times, the customer is who brings you the money. So ideally, you do what a customer wants. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we don't have, or that many players don't sufficiently take the perspective of their customers. And we had an interesting discussion yesterday also about, do we really know, sort of in hard numbers, what the customers expect? I think we all have a feeling, because we are all customers. Some might be more new school or modern, some might be more old school, like me. But anyway, so we have some expectations here. And I think it's very clear that even if their expectations are not that high, they are rarely met. So, yes, we have a need. We have a need for change here, and I think what becomes very clear, if you read through the entire survey, if you look at the numbers, I think it's very clear. We are facing a situation, and if you would take 1,000 or 2,000 organizations, the numbers might change a little. So we are close to 100, but I think the tendency will not change. The tendency is there are gaps with respect to strong customer authentication, with respect to APIs, and with respect to KYC. The first two aspects are the main aspects of PSD2 at the end of the day. Or with other words, most players affected by PSD2 are not well prepared yet. Clearly, all of you are, but obviously there are many others out there who aren't. Yeah, no, I've heard that some of you are from the Volksbank, also Sparkassen in Germany. I know at least the Volksbankenteil as a customer, and I don't yet have the impression that they are perfectly well prepared.
Might be accurate.
But as I've told him, it's very easy for me as a customer of a very small Volksbank, because I just send a mail to my account manager and he does what I want. So that might be not very compliant, but it works very well. Okay, so when we look at the people who responded, so we had, I think, a very good distribution across various levels. So from C-level, which might not know the details perfectly well, managing directors, down to broker and project managers, or engineers, analysts, people working concretely in the activities. So I think it's a pretty good share, or a pretty good distribution across the various job levels, job titles, which is always a little bit hard to standardize, because depending on the organization, the same job title might mean something totally different. People also have been involved, so they can be involved in various areas. So clearly many were involved in identity access and information security, information technology, but also more than half were actively involved in the digital innovation part. Where it comes, and this is where it's about how do I react on all these changes. Either how do I use the new opportunities or how do I defend myself, better use the opportunities. So I think overall the numbers provide a very good picture of the current state. Show that we have to change some things. So based on that, we ended up with 4 main recommendations. The one is support adaptive authentication. I talked about this yesterday a lot. And I think this is a very important aspect here. So you might need to move to multi-factor authentication. You might try to survive with 1-factor plus risk-based, at least for the next, for another 18 months or so. Another 18 months after the regulation becomes effective. But if you also want to serve your customer well, then you should really take into account that your customer wants to use the device of choice, that he wants to use an approach which is convenient to him, and that the days where you said, this is the only way to authenticate to my services, that these days are past. This is really thinking of the history. You shouldn't do it that way anymore. You should accept that, so for 2 reasons. One is really customer convenience, the other is all these ongoing changes in available technologies and accepted technologies, so what is considered being secure, what not. And taking this into account means you have to move, from my perspective, to adaptive authentication. Which also helps you then mitigating the risk of fraud, because if you're flexible enough, you can easily react if one, so I've brought up the RSA Secure ID incident 6 years ago. So if this happens and you have an adaptive authentication system in place, by configuration you can, for instance, say, okay, I need another PIN, another passphrase or so as an additional level of security, at least, on the fly more or less, instead of saying, okay, I'll need another 6 or 12 months to roll out new RSA Secure ID tokens or to change to another mechanism. So look at try to get a flexibility. The other point, obviously, is share, manage, and secure your APIs. So if you're in scope, you need to. So this is the ASPS law. Always hard to keep. So they really did a good job in finding abbreviations no one can keep in mind with this regulation. But at the end, if you're in scope, to provide APIs to third parties, you have to do it. And I think that the one thing is really the call for action to the banking industry. And KuppingerCole talked about, yes, they are working on standardizing it. And I think it would be very helpful to have standardized APIs. By the way, if you're a consumer of APIs, the other side hasn't standardized yet until you start consuming, then build your own interface first, which sort of remains stable, from where you then go to the proprietary interfaces of the various banks. So build a well thought out architecture here. So what you need at the end of the day is you need a centralized approach where you understand which APIs do we expose, how do we manage them, how can we scale them, how can we, all the things around API security management we need to do, and how do we secure them? So what are the various security levels? I think we will have another presentation by John where he looks more in detail on the technical elements in securing that. I think it's one of the afternoon sessions. So where we look at what else do we need aside of the specialized API security tools, but we need something. We need to expose APIs and we need to have the right tools. You should revisit your customer identification. So make it easier. There are new technologies available. Yes, that's more a pioneer game, but if you really look at it from the perspective of a customer, I think you definitely should make it easier. And to do that, you need to align forces. And this is, I think, maybe this is the biggest challenge, and definitely it's the first thing at the end of the day you need to do. Build a team. Build a leadership team consisting of the business people, the internal audit, and the IT experts. So it's not an IT challenge. It's not a digital innovation blah 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 challenge, however you've named that team. It's not a pure business problem. You need to bring different people on the same table, in the same room. And we had a lot of talks yesterday to which massive extent, for instance, the PSD requirements for opening up interfaces affect the business models. So from an IT perspective, you can enable everything or close down everything, but the business model decisions need to be made on at another place. And maybe sometimes the IT people have a pretty good understanding of what is the potential impact of it. So it's a conversation you need to have between the various people, the IT experts, the IT security experts, your audit people, your innovation people, all the others. If you want to meet a deadline, you need to start acting now, and you need to work as a team of people, not as an isolated initiative in certain areas of your organization. So that's it from my end. To give you some numbers, I think the results align very well. So they weren't a that big surprise to me. But they align well with, I think, what we've discussed yesterday and what we'll further discuss today.